Good evening. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. On behalf of the EJA and our partners, welcome to our memorial dinner. A special thank you to Rabbi Shlomo Kovesh at Emich and the Action and Protection League for their help and support. My name is Eli Edelkop, and I will be your host this evening. We are delighted and honored to welcome Presidential Minister Wojciech Kolarski, who will read a welcome message from the Polish President. Mr. Kolarski, please join us.
Good evening. As I'm here on behalf of the President of the Republic of Poland, it's a truly privilege for me to read a letter of President Duda. For you, organizers and participants of the ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to express my gratitude to the members of the European Jewish Association for organizing yet another ceremony which illustrates the tragic fate of the Jewish population in the 1930s. Please accept my greetings and thankfulness for this dismantling the truth about the events which have left a painful mark in the history of both our nations. This year's ceremonies are taking place at the sites particularly marked by the wartime suffering of Poles and the extermination of the large Jewish community living there. Both Krakow, the occupation capital of general government, and the former German Nazi concentration camp Auschwitz-Birkenau, the place of murder of over 1 million victims of the Nazi perpetrators, were witnesses to an unimaginable drama. They became the arena of bestiality that had earlier manifested itself in many German cities during the memorable night of the 9th and the 10th November 1938. Today we know that the mass pogrom of the Jewish population was the forerunner of the planned systematic genocide which many months later reached the climax in the camp of Auschwitz-Birkenau, at Majdanek, Treblinka, and in many other German death factories, with which the German occupiers desecrated our homeland, Poland, in Hebrew called Polin, meaning here you will rest, a space which Poles and the Jewish minority inhabited together in peace for nearly 1,000 years. Today, nurturing the memory of the common past constitutes the fulfillment of our duty and obligation towards those who had co-created the rich heritage of the Republic of Poland. We remember about the persecutions, robberies, and mass murders of our Jewish fellow citizens, perpetrated by the Germans on the Polish national territory, which they occupied. German invaders inflicted hatred, violence, and terror on this land which had possessed their minds before, during Kristallnacht. Today, Poland guards the memory of the Holocaust victims and does its best to make sure that the whole world does not forget, especially now when the last witnesses of the Shoah are passing, while anti-Semitic excesses are growing. In the aftermath of the criminal terrorist attack of Hamas on Israel on the 7th of October last year, recalling the truth about the nature of the Holocaust is getting even more important. We are doing it concerned about the future of the world, which we want to be a safe place free from hateful ideologies and the lack of war. We are aware of the special responsibility we bear for protecting and conveying successive generations the full historical truth about the tragedy which unfolded in our country. Responsibility for reminding about the guilt and the eternal shame of the cruel German perpetrators and about the infinite suffering of their victims. The fact that this is still a valid task is evidenced by the astounding and scandalizing return to the public debate of voices which relativize the Holocaust, questioning the perpetration as well as the consequences of the terror and genocide has to be countered with our strong response. We must not spare efforts to make sure that the future generations know the truth about those horrendous events and are able to make an independent and just moral assessment of them. Therefore, I do acknowledge all the initiative which, next to commemorating tormented and martyred victims of Nazism, also talk about the heroism of those who opposed the genocide and try to rescue in every possible way those exposed to cruel extermination. Eternal glory to the victims of Kristallnacht, eternal glory to the victims of the Holocaust. May their memory live on. Kind regards, President of the Republic of Poland, Andrzej Duda.
Thank you, Mr. Kolarski. Ladies and gentlemen, we gather in Krakow tonight and tomorrow in Auschwitz to remember the millions of lives taken. We say never again, but do we really mean it? I ask this question because today, in fact, right now across Europe, anti-Semitism is at levels last seen just before Kristallnacht. On October 7th, everything changed. The total and complete brutality of it, the terrible war that nobody wanted. The very real explosion of hate against the world's only Jewish state and against Jews everywhere. 1 year and 1 month have passed since that terrible day. Tonight, as we gather, over 100 hostages are still being held captive in Gaza. We don't know if they are alive or dead. At tonight's dinner, as you can see, we have laid a table for these hostages. They are always in our minds. As we start our dinner this evening, I would kindly ask you to stand and observe a moment of silence for those missing and for the innocent lives taken since October 7th. Thank you. For many of you, this is your first time with us at the European Jewish Association. But what is the EJA and what do we do? We have prepared a short video for you about the EJA.
The EJA exists to make life better for Jews in Europe, free from hate, free from ignorance, free of anti-Semitism, free to grow, free to be.
We know that in every generation, Jews have faced challenges. Time and time again, the links in our long, unbroken chain have been put under immense pressure. During the Holocaust, they were almost broken completely.
In a continent that should know better, antisemitism, the oldest hatred, still persists. Antisemitism includes anti-Zionism too, the latest manifestation of antisemitism, hatred of the Jewish state and all it stands for.
Combattre l'antisémitisme, combattre l'antisionisme. Et on doit également faire très attention en Europe à toutes les lois qui pourraient donner raison aux antisémites, aux lois qui pourraient remettre en cause la présence juive en Europe. C'est fondamental de combattre l'antisémitisme, l'antisionisme et de maintenir une vie juive possible dans les différents pays d'Europe.
The EJA's work is appreciated by politicians, diplomats, and by Jews across Europe. This is because they know that all of our activities are directed solely for the benefit of Jewish life, from the communities we serve right down to the individual Jew on their journey through life. That's why we take leading politicians and diplomats from across Europe to concentration camps and ghettos across Europe.
To remember, yes, but also to find modern answers to an age-old problem.
We light a candle to remember those who perished and those who survived, burdened with unimaginable hardships. It is our sacred duty never to forget, never to remain silent, never again.
To find solutions and to enact laws to make life better and safer for all.
Anti-Semitism has no place in our societies. We will never tolerate the Jews' fears for their safety in the European Union.
An old evil is resurfacing in Europe. Swastikas have been painted on the homes of Jews. Synagogues have been vandalized.
I really hope we can build a world without anti-Semitism, without racism, without discrimination.
The European Jewish Association fills an essential role, working in conjunction with European institutions, the Parliament and regional national parliaments, combating anti-Semitism in all its forms, empowering Jewish communities, and strengthening Jewish life all across the continent.
The EJA is all about a Jewish future, a future that is in our hands.
Jewish communities are lifeblood of Jewish life, but too many are being left behind or are stuck in decline.
The EJA brings communities together, from the biggest to the smallest, for important conferences, to make bonds, to share best practice, and to be part of something bigger than themselves.
We connect them with key decision makers and policymakers in their own countries, and where the needs are greatest, we offer rabbinical, security, and charitable support.
One of the most important missions for the European Jewish Association is to work together with Jewish communities and organizations from across the continent to ensure, together with governments, universities, and authorities, that Jewish people in Europe will be able to live with security, a full freedom of religion. There are many challenges and much to do, but together we could do it.
The EJA is one of the largest and definitely fastest growing of the Jewish organizations in Europe. It came to existence because of the vision of one man, and it is my great pleasure to invite him to address the dinner this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Rabbi Menachem Margolin to the stage.
Ministers, members of parliament, mayors, university deans, Jewish leaders, distinguished guests. First and foremost, I would like to thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for your presence here today, for your participation, your commitment, your support, your empathy. It is in difficult moments that true friendship is measured. And now, when we are going through difficult days, your support is greatly, greatly appreciated. Thank you very, very much. Dear friends, one of the most defining events in the history of the Jewish people was the first war they faced after they left slavery in Egypt. This was the war started by Amalek against the Jewish people over 3,000 years ago. Unlike other wars started for politics or territory, Amalek's war had no aim except pure destruction. Their hate was so deep that the only goal was to wipe out the Jewish people completely. This is why the Torah commands us to remember every day these horrific facts. Remember what Amalek did to you on your way out from Egypt. Unlike most other battles in the history, the reason for this war still exists and remains alive today. This Amalek hatred is a deep and terrible evil that has been around throughout history, taking on different forms. It represents the harshest form of cruelty known to humankind. It goes against everything good and fair. We may not fully understand why evil exists, but we do know that we can only truly appreciate light when we experience darkness. Evil always acts as warning. It reminds us that at any moment, absolute darkness could fall and bring cruelty not just to the Jewish people, but to the very core of humanity itself. 86 years ago, on the night of November 10, 1938, pure evil erupted once again, the Kristallnacht. This wave of hate spread across Germany, then Austria, and within 2 years, it had reached all of Europe and beyond. After that night, nothing could stop the flood. It set the stage for the final solution, the total extermination of the Jewish people. The Nazis made Jewish extermination, as you all know, their top priority, even more important than the war ambitions. This is clearly seen in the final years of the war, when in 1944, as Germany faced defeat, they still kept the genocide machine running. At Auschwitz-Birkenau, the largest death camp in history, the Nazis went to great lengths to keep it going, even when it was clear that doing so could harm the military efforts. In his final moments, in May 1945, when defeat stared him in the face, Hitler chose to focus on the Jewish people in his very last message. His eternal duty, he said, was to continue hating them. Just before committing suicide, he said, "Centuries will pass, but from the ruins of our cities, the hatred will always rise again against those ultimately responsible, the Jewish people." There is something especially dark about these words. Unlike his earlier speeches, filled with propaganda and lies, Hitler's last words reveal his deepest truth. With destruction all around him and with nothing left to achieve, he chose to make his final words a message of pure hatred, the very essence of evil. Today, at protests around Europe and not only, we can see banners that say, "Hitler was right." As painful as it is to admit, there is small truth in it, but not in the way the protesters mean. In one thing, Hitler was right. Even though Nazism was defeated and Hitler is condemned by history, the hatred he spread did not die. Year after year, month after month, day after day, we continue to see it rise again. On October 7, 2023, this hatred found new life. The tidal wave of anti-Semitism has returned, flooding the streets of Europe, of North America, at prestigious universities and on social media. Please do not be fooled about this hate. It uses different slogans, but it is the same hate. There is no real difference between swastikas and chants of Juden raus and the slogans like, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." Behind these words lies a deep-rooted hatred with one goal: to erase the Jewish people. This is nothing new. It is part of the long and painful history of the Jewish people, lasting over 3,000 years. The commandment to remember Amalek, it is therefore a deep moral, a deep duty for all of us. It means recognizing evil in its most unfiltered state and understanding that hate, always there under the carpet, is just waiting for the chance to rise again. And this hate has never really disappeared. Our duty is to keep being aware of it, aware that it is constant presence and that it will always continue to chase its goal. A reminder of this reality came just 2 weeks ago in the heart of Amsterdam, one of Europe's major cities. On the night of November 7, hundreds of anti-Semitic attackers targeted Israeli Jews. They assaulted them, chased them, they threw them into canals and into tram trucks. They have attacked even the hotels where they had found safety. Jewish people in Amsterdam once again found themselves hiding underneath tables and locking themselves in rooms, afraid of the hatred and terror that overtook the streets and their lives. Anna Frank would have known the feeling very well. Ladies and gentlemen, do not be misled by the political mask that the hate tries to wear. You can oppose Israel policies just as you can oppose any policies of any nation. But this has nothing to do with the calls for Israel destruction or the call to attack and kill Jews anywhere in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand here tonight with an urgent call to each of you. We should stop the tide of hate before it drags us all unhinged. As I said in my opening remarks earlier today, I believe every European nation should declare a formal state of emergency on anti-Semitism. This would allow European government to take proper steps to respond to the horrible return of hate happening right in front of our eyes. This emergency decree, lasting at least 6 months, grants European government the authority to implement stronger police presence, restrict violence and inciting demonstrations, and hold to those who incite against the Jewish community to account. This may sound like a radical step, I agree, but we are in an extraordinary situation. Nice words and strong statements have achieved nothing. There is now no other choice but to act strongly. When the Torah describes the Jewish people facing Amalek, it describes a people who were weak and exhausted. It was these weaknesses that allowed Amalek to attack the Jewish people back then. Therefore, we must never forget, and we must be strong. Because in the end, we have no other Europe, no other world. Some people ask, what is the secret of the Jewish people's success? I believe it is in our belief that yes, evil does indeed challenges us, but we will not allow it to exist forever. Goodness, on the other hand, is eternal, and light shines even brighter in the darkest night. This is why for over 3,300 years, in good times and in bad, the Jewish people have stayed committed to humanity in science, medicine, technology, and ethics. Only 3 years after surviving the horrors of the Holocaust, the survivors established the State of Israel and turned it into a bright home for the Jewish people. Many empires of evil have vanished, but ultimately it is goodness that victories. I have no doubt that this will be the same also these times. It is in time of difficulties that the greatest example, this is what counts. And for this reason, I would like to thank you very much for choosing good, for being with us today, because together with God's help, we will make sure that Amalek once again will be defeated and goodness will be prevailed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi Margolin. We know that in every generation, Jews have faced challenges. Time and time again, the links in our long, unbroken chain have been put under immense pressure. During the Holocaust, they were almost completely broken. Our next guest, ladies and gentlemen, is a very special lady. She was a hidden child and she survived. She has spent her life teaching against hate, about the need to educate against it. She is tireless and she is fearless. She was honored by the King of Belgium with the title of Baroness for all the work she has done to build bridges between communities and as president of the Forum of Jewish Organizations in Antwerp. And we are incredibly lucky to have her as a dear friend and as an active member of our Council of Jewish Leaders, where she serves as a vice chairwoman for Holocaust Remembrance. It is now my great pleasure to invite Baroness Regina Sokołowski-Słuszny to the stage.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for giving me the time to tell something about my life when I was a little girl during the war. My motto is, without memory, no future. The book of what I passed, and my husband was also a hidden child, is now available in English. My two parents came from Poland. My father came to Belgium to be cured because he had skin cancer on one side of his face. And in Belgium, the doctors knew how to cure him. After he was cured, he came back to Warsaw to get married. He came from a very Orthodox Jewish family, and he had never worked till then, but he was helped in Belgium not only by the doctor, but also by the brother of his mom, his uncle, who told him that after he gets married, he could come back to Belgium and he would help him to find some work. Well, after his wedding, he had to come back on his own because in Belgium, the law said that he had to prove that he earned enough money to keep his wife, and he had never worked. So he came back on his own. He worked for a year, and then only his wife could come to Belgium. Sadly enough, he was never capable of proving later that he earned enough to bring his mom. So I never met anybody of the family of my mother or my father. They all stayed in Poland and perished in the war. My father worked in Antwerp on the markets. And when the war broke out, he couldn't work anymore because the Jewish people, we lived in Antwerp, and the Jewish people couldn't go out freely. They couldn't work anymore. Everything was taken from them. And one of his non-Jewish friends said to my father, I have a mom, she has pensioned a cafe not far from Antwerp. She has some rooms, you can go there and hide. This was after we tried first to go to England, because in the first war, a lot of people went to England and they were saved. Well, when we came to the seaside, I was then a baby still. The last boat had departed. We slept there outside, and in the morning the Germans arrived and we couldn't go to England anymore. It was the soldiers, the German soldiers, who brought us back to Antwerp, and all the other Jewish people who were there from Brussels and from Liège, because one of the laws was also that the Jews had to live in the big cities. When we arrived at home, everything was stolen from us. There was nothing anymore in the house, and my father must have written to the town hall in Antwerp to tell them, we have nothing to live anymore, we have no money. And actually, they paid my father because they thought it was the Germans were doing the war and it was a war crime. So it's with the money he got that we left Antwerp to go in hiding in Hemixem. Now, the lady's name in the cafe was Mrs. Pauldin. She gave us 2 rooms, one for my parents and one for my 2 brothers and myself. My eldest brother was about 10, the other one was about 8, and I was only 2.5 years. Now, they couldn't come out of the rooms during the day because most of the Jewish children used to have very dark hair. I was one of the exceptions. I had blonde curls, and I could go down and play in the yard behind the house, which was closed. Next to the cafe where we were hidden, there was a food shop, and in the food shop lived Anna and Charles Jacobs van Dijk, the most beautiful, best people I ever met in my life. The wall between the 2 houses, there was a hole. And me, as a little girl of 2.5, I could go from one house into the other one, going through that hole. Anna and Charles had no children, and they never got any children, just me. But Anna had cats, and when she made food at lunchtime, she made the same food for her cats. And we didn't have enough food. So there were days that I was looking for food. And when Anna came out with a plate with food for the cats, she went back into the kitchen. I went through the hole and wanted to take the food from the cats. I didn't know that Anna was standing behind the curtain in her kitchen, and she saw me. Lucky for me, she realized that if a little girl of 2.5 wants to take food from the cats, she must be very hungry. And she realized also that behind this little girl was a family. And from that day on, she gave me food for my parents, my brothers, and for me. Now, we thought that we were safe hiding at the place with Mrs. Pauldin, but somebody must have found out. And behind the 2 houses, there was the German army in a big castle living. And one of the people out in Hemixem, where the houses were standing, went to the Germans and said, there is some Jews living with Pauldin, you have to go and pick them up. An officer went to the mayor, and it's the mayor who had to come and take us to Dossin, to the Caserne Dossin in Mechelen, from where all the Jews from Belgium were taken to Auschwitz. Lucky for us, he had a little son of 12. And he decided to send his son to Charles, the neighbor where we were living, and come and tell my parents to flee from the back of the house because there was an entrance in the front and also a door to get out in the back of the house. When Charles comes to us, he said, Mr. and Mrs. Schlusny, take whatever you can take in your hands. Take your 2 boys. If you want, you can leave the little one with us. And if you find a good place, you come and pick her up. My parents had maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, I don't know. I was 2.5. My parents left, and I stayed with Anna and Charles. Well, I was a very, very happy little girl staying with those people. I had a room for myself. I had love from these people because they wanted children and they never had children. And they had food in the shop, so I had always, my stomach was filled. My parents didn't come and pick me up during that time of the war, 3.5 years, because they had to change 15 times during the night from one place to another because something happened and they had to leave. So I didn't see my parents for 3.5 years. And I stayed with Anna and Charles. I was very happy because they loved me a lot. I went with Anna to church, but she never asked me to say a prayer or whatever, just to sit next to her because she knew that I was a Jewish girl and she didn't expect for me to change that. I went also to kindergarten, and when the war finished and we were saved by the Canadian army, the teacher said to Anna and Charles, if you think that your little girl will go later to study, you better send her from the first year, because I was turning 6 and would go to the school, first class, send her to Antwerp. It's only 20 minutes. So Charles decided that he was going to write a little note to my parents to come and pick me up. So you would ask, how did Charles know? Well, except from keeping me 3.5 years safe and loved, he used to go out regularly and bring food to my parents. For a long time, I never knew how he could find them. But lately, in a house who was empty, and in one of the cupboards that they emptied, when they emptied the house, they found some letters. And in the letters was written that Charles was with the Resistance, who was fighting the Germans. So I suppose that through them, he knew every time where my parents were hiding, and that's how he could bring them some food. When my mother came to pick me up, I saw her. She looked terrible. She was thin, white skin. I was a bit scared of her. And I said, bonjour, madame. I didn't recognize her because I hadn't seen her for 3.5 years. And Charles said, but that's your mom and you can go home now. Well, I was home. I didn't remember that there was another home. I remembered that Anna wasn't my mom, but I didn't know which other lady was my mom. Lucky for me, my mother asked Charles and Anna, how can we ever do something for you for saving our little girl and bringing food for the 4 of us? And all what these wonderful people asked was, don't take the little girl completely from us. And my mom, she was a very Orthodox lady she's the granddaughter of the Jose of Lublin. She gave a word that I would come every weekend to Hemixem, to Anna and Charles. So it means that in the week, I was with very Orthodox people, which I didn't understand because they spoke Yiddish, and all I was speaking was Flemish. So I had to learn Yiddish to understand my own folks. So for me, it was the time that it was difficult because everything was different. The food, the language they spoke, they were quite nervous because they still had this scareness in them. And suddenly I was with two other boys bigger than me. And most of the people here knows that in Jewish families, if the first one is a boy, well, he's the king in the house. So they looked at me like, what is this little one coming to do here? Because 3.5 years they hadn't seen me. So it was quite difficult. Much more than in Hemixem, where I was alone, where I could do everything, I could ask questions, they would explain to me, and for my parents, they couldn't explain because I couldn't understand them. And every weekend, I went back. So it means that in the week, I was a religious little girl going to a Jewish school. And in the weekend, I was nothing. And I didn't realize. And this went on till I was about 14, 15. And then I wanted to meet some other youngsters because in school, I had only girls, no boys. And my brothers weren't that nice with me, so I went only on Sundays, and I stayed home. Now, never eating gefilte fish or the real Jewish food, it was difficult for me. Even so that when my mom made some sandwiches for me to go to school in the morning, because I stayed in bed, so I shouldn't have to eat those sandwiches, I threw them away because it was not white bread, there was no butter, there was no chocolate on it, like I got in Hemixen with Anna and Charles. And I never realized when I was a small girl that throwing this away, it was food taking out of the mouth of my mother and my father and my brothers. Later on, I realized what I had done, but as a little girl, I never realized. So I was one family, my war parents, as I called them, and my own parents. I made it my life motto to go to schools because I think that those people, the righteous, they can't be forgotten. The goodness of these people, that I am staying here, that I was married and had 2 children. I have 4 grandchildren and a great-granddaughter. It's thanks to those people. We can never forget that. But nowadays, when I go to school, it's okay because I know where I'm going. But one school in Antwerp, the teacher said to me, "Will you come this year?" I said, "Why shouldn't I come?" She said, "Because the Muslim teacher said to me that if Regine is coming, she will invite a Palestinian to come and tell about what's going on now in the East." And I said, "Well, it's got nothing to do with that, because I want to see only good people and not bad. And my wish is that there would be nowhere a war, but people have nothing in their mind, they didn't learn anything, and that makes me sad. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Regina. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to show you a very short but impactful video made by some Israeli comedians, but with a very powerful message.
זה היה בבוקר של 9 באב, התעוררנו מרעש מחריד, לא הבנו מה קורה. עד שהבנו, אז הרומאים התחילו לשרוף את המקדש. תוך רגע הם מילאו את הרחובות, התחלנו לשמוע צעקות מרחוק, אז סגרנו את החלונות, נעלנו את הדלתות, וישבנו בשקט, בלי להוציא מילה. ואז שמענו צרחות מהבית ליד.
הבנו שפרצו לבית של השכנים שלנו. משפחה נחמדה, האבא היה המוהל של הקהילה, הוא עשה לבן שלי את הברית. שמענו אותם צועקים, עד שלא שמענו יותר כלום. חשבנו לברוח ליער, אבל כל מי שניסה לברוח גילה שפשוט אי אפשר.
הם חיכו ברחובות ותפסו כל מי שיצא החוצה מהבית. השלג התערבב עם הדם. אנחנו חיכינו שמישהו יבוא לעזור לנו. המשטרה, הצבא, מישהו, אבל אף אחד לא בא. התפללנו לאלוהים, אבל גם הוא לא בא. הרגשנו כל כך לבד. ואז הם באו ודפקו אצלנו על החלונות, אז מהר לקחנו את הילדים, תפסנו אותם, רצנו לכיוון הגג.
יכולנו לראות את כל הבתים מסביב, הכל אש, הכל שרוף. ראינו את הפנים שלהם, של האנשים שעד אתמול קנינו אצלם ירקות, הופכים חיות אדם.
הם היו באקסטזה, הם ניפצו את החלונות ראווה, ראיתי אותם שורפים את החנות של אחותי, אחר כך עולים ושורפים את הבית כנסת, והכל היה מלא עשן וסמוכיות, לא חשבתי שבני אדם מסוגלים לעשות דברים כאלה. זה היה כאילו להסתכל על הרוע האנושי בעיניים.
הם ידעו בדיוק לאיזה בתים להיכנס, כי הם סימנו אותם בצבע אדום. הקטנה שלי שאלה אותי אם הם הולכים לרצוח גם אותנו. לא ידעתי מה להגיד לה. אמרתי לה, לפחות אנחנו ביחד.
כולם שואלים אם נצליח לחיות עם זה. אנחנו חייבים איכשהו להמשיך הלאה, לאט לאט, להתחיל לבנות מחדש.
את כל מה שהם הרסו, את כל מה שהם שרפו.
את המשפחות, את הקהילות, את העם.
אנחנו לא הולכים לשום מקום. אנחנו נמשיך לחיות פה.
נמשיך לחיות בשביל כל מי שאיבדנו, בשביל הילדים שלנו. אנחנו נהיה בסדר.
בפנים עמוק, אני יודעת את זה. רק אם הייתי יכולה לראות עוד פעם אחת את אחותי.
הבן שלי, את אח שלי.
את האחיין שלי.
את אבא שלי.
את אמא שלי.
רק עוד חיבוק אחד.
In every generation, the Jewish people, no matter the circumstances, have been able to count on a righteous few. The few who did the right thing, sometimes putting their own lives at risk to save ours. Just before, we heard Regina saying her very emotional, amazing story, how she was adopted and by the parents who hid her, who kept her safe. In today's world, it is not an easy task to support Jewish people, much less the state of Israel. But as I said, in every generation, there are a few righteous people. Our next guest is very much among them. Pastor Dumisani Washington has organized Christian support for Israel across the United States and in Africa. From South Africa, Zimbabwe, Togo, Ghana, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Kenya, Morocco, and many more places. Pastor Washington is also the founder and CEO of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. It is incredible and important work. It comes from a place of deep faith and of deep commitment to the Jewish people. To tell us more about his work, it is my great honor to invite Pastor Washington to join me on stage.
To all the leaders of EJA, I want to say the wrong acronym, and all of the dignitaries and the leaders that are here, political rabbis. I may be the only pastor, so I'll say to the pastor. I want to first apologize for my attire. I just got off a plane. I haven't had much sleep over the last couple of days, but I'm glad to be here. I'm honored to be here. I had not met Ruth face to face until today, but she follows some of the work that we've done at the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. And we're honored to do that work as well. I started that organization in 2013, and I started it several months after my first trip to Israel, which was December 2012. I was part of the African American Pastors Tour of Christians United for Israel, an organization for which I served on staff for nearly 7 years afterwards, but I wasn't on staff at the time. I was no one important any more than I am now. I just was fortunate enough to go to Israel, something that I always wanted to do. And when I went, I was always a lover of Israel as a Christian growing up. And there were two things in my heart. I had in Africa, deep love for Africa from the time I was a young adult. Those two things kind of married each other there at the Western Wall. One of those nights, it was Hanukkah that year, that time of December. And I can only explain it in this way, and I speak about it in my book, that God placed on my heart to leave there and do the work of strengthening the relationship between both the Black and Jewish communities in the United States and Israel and Africa. I told our church when we get back, and I spoke to them about what was on my heart, you have a sense that it's probably God because you have no idea how you're going to do what you feel to do. And I began to speak. I began to organize. At some point, I'm speaking in churches, synagogues, universities across the campus, around the country. At some point, on staff with Kufi, going back and forth to Israel. And I must have, at this time, with different organizations and different thrusts, been to Israel some 15, 16 times over the last 10, 11 years. I don't remember which trip it was, but maybe the second or third, I don't know. It's in Yad Vashem. And as those all of who've gone, it's huge. And it's just not even just emotionally, but just physically to take in, to be able to go through all of the corridors and see all of the things that are so important to see, the video displays, the shoes from the children, all of these things. And this one particular time, I don't remember what section it's called, but I stood there looking at the map. This map, this particular map, because obviously there's more than one, was the map of the Nazi incursion into North Africa. I saw the placements in Libya and throughout. And having wonderful friendships throughout the Jewish community for a long time. From California, from where I'm from, I don't live there now, there's a large Mizrahi community from which I had learned about the Farhud, Persian Jews, the Jews of Syria, the Jews of Yemen. And as I watched the map, I was reminded of something, that infamous picture, Berlin 1941, when Adolf Hitler is sitting there with the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. There were two Nazis in that picture. What we found as an organization is that generally in the West, and I, as an American, will speak specifically to that for a moment, we have failed our Jewish brothers and sisters. That comes in many different ways. And since I don't have my regular preach it allotted time of an hour, I'll whittle this down a couple of moments. For reasons that are both political and spiritual, we, when I say we now, please understand that I'm saying we in the West and America, as supporters of Israel, have not done our due diligence in what I call speaking truth to power. It is politically inexpedient to name Israel's enemies by name when they don't fit a specific genre. And this has captured the West. In 2014, Dr. Charles Asher Small, who is the head of, some of you know the organization, the Institute for Global Study of Antisemitism and Policy, there's an article that was written about him in Al-Gemeiner, April 2014. And the title of the article is Rwanda Genocide Scholars Urge Jews to Recognize Iran Threat as Similar to the Nazi Regime. That's the title of the article. I'm going to read for you 2 sentences. Dr. Small said the Rwandans, quote, were very much concerned about the future of Israel and the dehumanization by radical Islamists as the Iranian regime against the Jewish people, and wanted to know why the American Jewish community were not as alarmed as they were, end quote. Quote again, the Rwandan group implored me to tell the Jewish community, its leaders, intellectuals, professionals, and policymakers that the Iranians, meaning the leaders, not the people, were using the same tactics against Jews as the Tutsis had suffered in Rwanda, which was similar to the Jews during the Holocaust. This was 10 years ago. There were Rwandans who, because of the genocide that they suffered in 1994 and Israel's help, Israel actually built a memorial, for those of you who don't know, in Rwanda, commemorating that genocide, whereas the West completely forgot about it. And the Rwandans, who are already devout Christians and Christian Zionists, felt an even more of a connection with their Jewish brothers and sisters. So they were concerned, and they saw this Jewish scholar at the conference, and they cornered him, if you will. And they were concerned with the rhetoric. 10 years later, the Islamic Republic of Iran is the Third Reich of today. The problem is not many can admit that. Can you imagine the greatest generation defeating fascism and not being able to name who and what it was? This is the capture that is here. When we are speaking with Black pastors across the country in the United States, we are talking to them about the biblical mandate to stand with Israel and the geopolitical reality that is both Israel and the anti-Semitism that we see flowing from that. Our organization warned, and we weren't the only ones, that before you got to October 7th, 2023, there was May 2021 in which Islamic Jihad fired some 4,000 rockets into Israel. A large percentage of them actually falling in Gaza and killing Palestinians. The media didn't care about any of that. Some of you may remember throughout the West, but now specifically the United States, Jews in the streets of New York, Chicago, and LA were being accosted then, more than 2 years before October the 7th. And we put out statements in our organization and we said, because of the Jew hatred that was being fomented on our college campuses, in social media and other places, and was being allowed to, even indirectly funded by our government. Why do you say that, Dumisani? Muslim Brotherhood hides as nonprofit organizations that receives tax dollars throughout the United States of America. We are funding our own war against our Jewish brothers and sisters and against us. We predicted that the next Israel-Gaza war would bring about, sadly, what we're seeing now. Why am I saying this to you? We have these conversations with Black pastors and leaders so that they understand what is happening and that they're able to inform their parishioners, that they're able to inform their colleagues. We are oftentimes the ones who come into the room and overturn the apple cart to a certain degree. I'm not Jewish, I'm not European, came all the way from North Carolina to let you know that there are many Christians who are standing with you and continue to. And we recognize what Jonathan Sachs says has never been more true than it is today. What starts with the Jewish people never ends with the Jewish people. We recognize that Israel's fight, our Jewish brothers and sisters' fight, is our fight. We understand that. And at the same time, we understand that not speaking truth to power in that fight only imperils you and us and everyone. We're able and honored to serve with an organization called the African Jewish Alliance that actually came about. We didn't start it. It was started by actually African Christians and Muslims who saw what happened to Israel. On October the 7th, there's a former African slave from Sudan who now lives in New York by the name of Simon Dang. Some of you may have heard his name before. And when he saw the horrific videos that Hamas itself recorded and shared with the world, it reminded him of the village in South Sudan that was pillaged the same way. And he was taken as a slave at around 8 years old to an Arab family that lived in the north of Sudan. And he heard the cries, the Allah Akbar. He saw the beheadings. He saw the exact same images. And he says, that's exactly what happened to us. Not only him, Stephen Anata, a Nigerian gentleman who also suffered some of the same things in Nigeria. Our African brothers and sisters stood up and they saw the pictures, and not only were their hearts broken, they had a visceral reaction, one that was deep empathy because they experienced it. They saw it, they knew it. Like when Boko Haram kidnapped those 200 plus girls in Nigeria. And they began to say, bring them, bring back our girls. So when they saw the hashtag, bring them home now, they connected those hashtags themselves. In the West, there is a general unwillingness to admit that. There are even brave Muslims with whom we work who are speaking truth to power. They often don't get the support from the West because there are others in the West who are afraid of being labeled. Could you imagine that your family is about to be threatened with annihilation and you're afraid of not using the right term? This is what's happening. And on the campuses, when Students for Justice in Palestine organizes, they have no voice. So the first group that they look to form an alliance with is, guess what? The Black Student Union. Why? Because those Black students have a legacy from slavery through Jim Crow to freedom. And those students represent justice. So this has been the case, which is something else we tell the Black pastors. That not only do we stand with our Jewish brothers and sisters, not only is it a biblical mandate, but there are those who are attempting to use our legacy to destroy Israel, to use our legacy. Israel is not an apartheid state, nothing close to an apartheid state. So there are Black South Africans who also raise their voices, recognizing that their legacy will not be destroyed from what they went through so that those people can try to destroy Israel, which is the furthest thing from an apartheid state. There are many who are raising their voices because they recognize what hour this is. As I come to the end of my sermon, my son and I, earlier this year, were in one of the historic synagogues in Los Angeles. My son's a musician, as am I, and it was a music celebration or commemoration, if you will, several months after October the 7th. So the feeling throughout the ceremony was the highs and the lows, Rabbi. There was the sharing of scripture and songs, and then the remembering of the deaths and the remembering of the names, remembering of the hostages that are still there even now. And it was such an amazing moment because in the room, you felt the hope and the despair. Everything came together, but only in a way that we understand it scripturally. What was amazing was that here are our Jewish brothers and sisters gathered together for this commemoration, if you will. And the songs are heartfelt and they're being sung from the depths of their souls. And then the testimonies of different difficulties are being shared as well. And you are feeling every moment. None of it is contradictory. It's just something that's coming together in a very, very strange and beautiful way. Psalm 147 is among the many of Psalms that are have such lore throughout the Christian church. Christians often sing, of those 8 verses, 7 of them. I will lift up mine eyes to the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not suffer your foot to be moved. The Lord that keepeth thee, he shall not slumber nor sleep. There's a very famous song. There's many songs that were written from there, and it goes on. The Lord is my keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. It struck me as a musician a little while ago, maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, as I was with some black pastors in Israel at the time. We have some just times of sharing in scripture. And it hit me that of those 8 verses, the one that's generally omitted, and I'm not suggesting that the Christian writers did it intentionally, but what's generally omitted is verse 4, which is the point of the song. He that keepeth Israel. Hine lo yanum ve lo yishan shomer Israel. It's amazing. I shared this in a synagogue, and one of the Jewish friends walked to me, Pastor Misani, we have been praying the prayer of Psalm 147, verse 7, especially every day since October the 7th. So we sang it together. I shared with him a little bit of the gospel part, how it went. And then we sang together the Psalm 147, verse 4. I want to do that with you now before I sit down. And as we do it, I want you to know that as you are praying that, so are we. We recognize that this fight, this battle, it is incumbent upon us, your Christian brothers and sisters, to stand. If you say never again, our saying has been not on our watch. What's happening in all of its ugliness is happening on our watch. So we challenge ourselves in God to do all that we can. So I want you to sing it with me, all right? He ne lo yanu, ve lo ishan. You know that, sing with me. Lo yanu, ve lo ishan. He ne lo yanu, ve lo ishan. Shomer Israel. When I learned that from my Jewish friends in their synagogue, we take it and do gospel things with it and everything. We'll do that here. And since October 7th, it has even a deeper meaning for us now. We know that in this battle that we must fight. I have to tell one last story, Ruth, I'm sorry. A few months ago, I was on the phone with an Israeli friend. He's actually a friend of another friend. The friend called me on WhatsApp, we're talking, and he had a friend with him who's one of the captains of the guards in the Galilee region. The captain's name is Gabriel, Captain Gabriel. And he was introduced to me, we started to talk, Pastor Dumisani, thank you all for the work that you're doing. He said, we know that Hashem has us. We know this may be the great battle that the prophet spoke of. This may be, they may meet us in Armageddon. I'm just listening to him. He's just kind of going on about the prophets and everything like that. Say, amen, 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 amen. He's encouraged. And yes, now by this point, a couple of hundred of Israelis have already perished in Gaza. And Lebanon was just beginning in terms of that front. The media lies and says that Israel. I tell people, why wouldn't they're trying to conquer the region. I tell my Jewish friends, you're the worst imperialist I've ever met. You've been there since 1948 and you still have that strip of land. I tell them, that's completely idiotic. Why would they want to conquer the region when what they want is peace? They fight the battles that are brought to them. And in that, he says to me, in all his encouragement, he says then to me, Rabbi, some of us may have to die. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Here he is encouraging me as a Christian supporter of Israel, and he's speaking of the God of Israel and how we're going to be victorious. And what he was saying in this only way this very brave IDF soldier could say is that I'm willing to lay down my life to defend Eretz Israel. That has nothing to do with whether or not God is the Shomer Israel. It was a sermon within 2 minutes. Here he is declaring God's sovereignty and that he's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But as a soldier, he was saying to me, my job is to fight, and fight I will. If I have to die, we will live. I said, you know what? I'm going to share that with every pastor that I speak to from now and across the country. That level of faith. Yes, we stand with you. You inspire us. Zionism has meant to the Black community for centuries something that means rebirth, that means moving forward, that means building from the ashes. And no less now, you inspire us. We stand with you. Know that it is real. Know that it is genuine. And thank you so much for allowing me to be with you here on tonight.
Thank you, Pastor. But I cannot let you leave just yet. I would like to call on Rabbi Menachem Margolin, Baroness Luzny, Mr. William Daroff, Mrs. Ellen Van Praag, and Mr. Olivier Lazar to join me on stage. Pastor, you will of course know all about King Solomon. He once said that a friend loves you at all times, but a brother is born for adversity. You, Pastor, are our brother, and we wanted to thank you for this honor that you have given us. Pastor Dumisani, Washington, it is our pleasure to award you the EJA King Solomon Award for your incredible and important work.
It's the wrong side. It's on both sides. Dear Reverend, it's an honor for me to present you with the King Solomon Award from EGA, from all over Europe, from all the leaders. I congratulate you and thank you from the deepest of my heart. Yeah, please shake hands.
Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy your dinner. Bon appetit. Ladies and gentlemen, in the middle Shh. In the middle of the terrible events of October 7th, there are moments where the human spirit shines through, where light conquers darkness. I want to share with you a short video.
What goes through the mind of a young man who goes in one instant from dancing at a party to fighting a brutal battle for his life? Each hero has a name and a story to tell. Some win, and it becomes an epic in the story of life. Such is the story of Daniel and Neriya Sharabi, brothers in arms. On the morning of Saturday, the 7th of October, they found themselves joining a mass of people who were fleeing from the Nova Festival grounds. The festival, which only moments before had been filled with joyful partygoers, rapidly became the scene of a massacre. The following hours could have been taken straight from a horror movie, something unimaginable in real life. Who will live and who will die, we say on our Day of Atonement. They chose life. They sprang into action, dividing roles between them. One cared for the wounded, performing life-saving procedures. The other ensured that terrorists wouldn't be able to infiltrate the oasis of safety that they tried to create in the heart of the killing zone. They were surrounded by armed terrorists. There was a gathering of young people, most of whom were wounded. They found shelter behind a disabled tank and chose to fight back until the last bullet. Daniel is a combat medic who is trained in saving lives under fire, but in this case, the battle was being fought by his own brother, Neriya, a combat soldier who, out of necessity, became their commander in the battle for their very lives. The sights, the voices, the cries, and the scenes of horror have stayed with them every minute since the 7th of October. The foundation they founded symbolizes the triumph of the spirit over circumstance. It symbolizes a survival instinct that is stronger than any massacre. And it speaks of us, the eternal people who unite in moments of joy, but also in the moments of great sadness that have befallen us. So, what goes through the mind of a young man as he battles to save himself and his friends while facing dozens of terrorists whose goal is to destroy them? I wish we didn't know the answer to that. Each hero has a name, and his name is Daniel Sharabi.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great and sincere honor to welcome to the stage now one of the Sharabi brothers, Daniel. Please join us.
Hi everyone, good evening. Bon appetit. Thank you to EJA for this invitation to speak with you. I work with the EJA around the world, in America especially. My brother, unfortunately, not with us. He's okay, but he's in Israel. My name is Daniel Sharabi, and I survived the Nova massacre. I'm 24 years old. I finished the army 3 years ago as a combat medic. And the Nova was goodbye party because I'm supposed to leave Israel. I invite a lot of friends, family to the Nova. We arrive 5 cousins, 2 brothers, and around 40 friends that we arrive together to hang out for a festival of music festival, you know, like Tomorrowland in Europe. And we found ourselves facing with demon, and from Festival of Happiness it's become to Festival of Dead. My story is too long to share it now. I have only a few minutes, but I will share with you 2 big parts of my story. I was a medic in the army, and in a minute that I hear that someone gets shot, I understand that I'm going to help because this is who we are. We are a Jew, and when we saw someone in trouble, we're going to help. And to this position that I took, joined me my brother, my cousin, and Yosef Chaim Ohana, that now hostage. He's one of my best friends since the boarding school. And we found a girl that was shot, 3 bullets rolled in her leg and back. And we understand that it's not something regular that happened. It's much bigger than that. And we evacuated the girl back to the festival. We took the girl from the road 232. And when we took the girl back to the festival, to the safe zone, we arrived to the medics and the doctors, and we understand that the doctor is Arab. And the 2 of the medics that was there also Arab. And few of them also a Jew, but they was Arab. And for a second, you not understand what's going on. And then you understand that we live in Israel. We live with Arab, with Christian, and we're part of something. We're going back to the road, and suddenly the terrorists arrived to us, and they start to shoot. And we was hiding behind the car, 4 people, and one of the RPGs hit the car that he was behind, and we all flew. And I have blackout from this moment, but I know after that I found myself and my brother going forward. My friend Yosef go to the left side of the road and get kidnapped 10 minutes after. He's still a hostage. And when we finished the road, we found a abandoned tank that one of the soldiers that was inside died. We decided, okay, we've been hunting for 2-3 hours, but now we have opportunity to fight back. And if I'm going to die, I'm not going to die like that. We jump in, me and my brother. We take the weapons from inside. I was a medic, and we're going out, and we start to see some people gathering around, some wounded people. So I start to take care of the wounded. My brother responding fire to the terrorists, and I call to my commander. I put him on a speaker and start to give me orders what to do, how to act. And we found ourselves fighting for 6-7 hours behind this tank, and people from the festival getting around to us, another group and another group. We hit by 3 RPG. All my right side was with shrapnels. Part of them still here, but most of them out. And as a medic, I handle with a lot of blood over there, but something that I never will forget. It's a guy that get shot, a few bullets on his arm, and I did for them a tourniquet. I put for them tourniquet. It's to stop the bleeding. I don't know if a few doctors or someone that connect to the medic, but to do tourniquet on the field is the only one time that you can do it, and only in the hospital they can take it out or switch it. And I switched it for this guy 5 times, and in the end it's get released, and his vein came out and start to bleeding on my face. And I have to touch his vein with my right hand to stop the bleeding, and with the other hand to put tourniquet again. And when we finished this day, when the army arrived to us, my officer arrived to me, and few other soldiers, we started to drive out. Few vehicles that took us back. On the way out, we saw more than 200 dead bodies. Actually, our truck drive on 2 dead bodies, and you feel it. You saw them. You saw young people that you can recognize their clothes that was with you in the party. You don't know what's going on with the rest of your friends, but you're going to the police station, wounded, but you are okay. The army arrived. And in the army, they teach you how to fight, how to be a medic, to help, but they don't teach you how to handle after that with what you feel and what you saw. And we found ourselves start to get an experience of trauma. And 2 weeks after, I start to get panic attacks for the first time in my life. And I start to feel like I'm going to die. I don't know from what. I fight with terrorists. I killed maybe 20, 40 terrorists. I don't know how much. And I'm afraid to die. I start to get treatment. And then I fly to US for the first time. And I start to speak, to share my story and to bring awareness to October 7. And I saw how much is important to me to talk, to heal myself, and to other people hear what is it. What is it? What we've been through. What we're going to be through if we're not going to live on the search. And tonight, I'm here with you for anti-Semitism and to mention 80 years of the camps. And it's so symbolic for me. When she spoke, I hear a lot of stories about the Holocaust. And now I'm a part of survivors. And I have personally connection to Regina for what she say about the fear, about how is it to feel to be hunting for 10 hours, about to be a friend of someone that in captivity for 400 days and 410 days. And it's not someone that you know. I know maybe 4 hostages. I know maybe 40 people in the party that died. But this is one of my best friends. And if you want to imagine what is it, you can look to the right side or your left side and see who is your friends here. Or maybe your brother. And to understand what I'm feeling for a year. How is to be part of the family that you need to listen to the dad crying or they happy, but you need to hold up because we know that we have reason to live. I have one experience from Europe. I've been traveling around the world for our foundation that we start after October 7 to help to the survivors. And me and my brother and other survivors that we sent going all around the world, America, South America, Israel speaking a lot. And for the first time, a year ago, we arrived to Europe. We arrived to England. A rabbi asked a lot. We didn't like Europe because the anti-Semitism that was going on here. You don't feel safe. And I say, okay, yalla, we're going. And on the border, when we arrived to Manchester, the police border asked, why do you come in to England? And my brother said, I didn't say, I know maybe it's anti-Semitism. My brother say, we coming to speak about the experience of October 7. And the guy changed his face and put us on the side for 2 hours. And for the first time, I saw something that really impact on all over Europe, on the students around the world, on the Jewish, because who we are. This is why I've been hunting. My friend died. One of my best friends born alive. Only 3 teeth and 1 bone left from her. Her name is Karin. She couldn't run. They killed all the medics. They killed all the doctors. It was at the party. Part of them was Arab. And I understand what is it and why is it. Okay, we understand that is anti-Semitism in Europe and in England especially. But in the way out, I found out why. When we left Europe, we arrived to the airport, but unfortunately the rabbi buy a ticket out for a month after. For a month after. And we arrived for nothing. But we have to go out, so you need police to guide you out. And the police arrived to us, and I saw on his face that he recognized me because it was all over the news. And he right away called to his commander. A woman arrived, and I understand this is someone higher than them because she afraid or he afraid to deal with us. And I saw his attitude, and I understand that I have to do something. I can speak, I can talk, but they're not going to listen. So maybe I will show him a video. And I show him one of the worst videos that I have on my phone from October 7, that I'm taking care of a girl that was naked and shot. And I saw her face changing, and I saw her get empathy for me. And she started to act like a human to human. And what I understand that they need to know, we need to bring awareness. And we need to bring awareness to October 7, and we need to bring awareness to what is Israeli mean, what is a Jewish mean. It's not mean bad people, because now all the students around the world going to be the power of the world in 20 years from now, and we're going to lose. We're going to lose in economic, we're going to lose in security, we're going to lose in life. And we don't want that. So we have a mission, I have a mission, and who is being on silence when something like that happen. And when we have hostages, we have 101 people in captivity in tunnels. When we eat here, they eat in nothing. They don't drink. Think about that. We can be in silence, not when they're there, and not till we will change the situation in the world now. If not, we have to give up. I'm here to tell you one more thing. We have hope. We are strong, and I promise you, in the name of thousands of survivors, we're going to rebuild our country from the beginning, and we're going to be strong again, and we'll never give up, not to these people, and not to the people that not going to let us to continue to live our life. We have right to live, and we have right to have families, and we're going to do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniel. I would like to call Rabbi Margolin, Mr. Yaron Zelov, Mr. Jeremy Urban, and Mr. Gabo Futo to join me on stage. Thank you, Daniel. You and your brother saved lives. There will be generations of continuity because of what you did. You are the strongest of lions, the bravest of heroes. It is our pleasure to present you with the EJA King David Award. Nobody deserves it more than you. We at the EJA are big believers in sport as a means of breaking down barriers, building bridges, and in fighting hate. In fact, it has been our pleasure to work with both Chelsea Football Club and Adidas in combating anti-Semitism. And both have received EJA awards for their commitment to fight hate. Maccabi World Union is the world's largest Jewish sports and education organization, reaching 450,000 people in over 70 countries across 6 continents. More than 80% of its members are under 35 years old. Maccabi is committed to strengthening the Jewish people worldwide and enabling Jews of all ages to grow closer to their Jewish heritage and to Israel. Their motto is sound Jewish, minds in healthy Jewish bodies. The chairman of Maccabi Europe, Mr. David Bessemer, is with us this evening. He has been to use the sporting term, a champion in European Jewry, keeping our young people active and engaged in their faith and background. But more than this, he has been active in incredible cross-community work and in building bridges. To tell us more, I would like to call on stage Mrs. Ruth Wasserman-Landa, former member of the Knesset and EJA senior advisor, for a short talk with Mr. David Bessemer. Please join us.
Good evening, everybody. Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. David Bessemer, maybe you can stand in the center of the stage and tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do and why you came here tonight.
Well, actually, I'm not the first David Bessemer, the real David Bessemer, and that's why it's so emotional for me to be here with you tonight in the vicinity of Auschwitz. The real David Bessemer was my grandfather, and my grandfather fled to Paris during the war. He was a proud member of the Jewish resistance. He was engaged in many fights. He was a very strong, big guy. But the Germans were after him and he fled to Paris. He got caught in Lille. My father was 8 at the time and he was rescued by the French resistance. It's a very complicated story, like many war stories. David Bessemer, the real one, was brought to Auschwitz together with his wife Selma. Selma was murdered in the gas chambers at arrival and he lived for another year over there and later on was murdered. And so was my other grandfather from my mother's side, Michael Pappy, was also murdered in Auschwitz. So I have 3 murdered grandparents here in Auschwitz. I promised myself never to come here, but when Rav Margolin called me, I couldn't resist, I couldn't say no. So that's actually where my volunteer story starts.
So apart from really causing a huge void in your heart, it also created a mechanism of imagination and a wish to make a meaningful life for the Jewish peoplehood. Please tell us a little bit about Maccabi and what it is that you devote your life to, not only on the professional level, but in sense of your spirit.
Well, when I was 8 years old, I was ambushed in a neighborhood by anti-Semitic kids. At that time already, I'm now 59, so it's quite a long time ago. And my father took my hand and brought me to the parents of these guys who tried to beat me up. And he confronted the parents and he learned a lesson. He learned me a lesson over there. He unfortunately died a few years ago, so he cannot be persecuted anymore for what he did over there, but that changed my life. I joined the security organization, the so-called Miss Garrett in Holland. And then when I was 45 years old, I was asked by, at that time, the president of Maccabi World Union to take over Maccabi in the Netherlands. And a few years ago, I was elected chairman of Maccabi Europe.
So perhaps tell our guests, what does Maccabi do? What is it? Not everybody is aware of this beautiful factory of imagination, of creativity, not only of sports, but truly of Jewish spirit.
Yes, so we're all about Jewish pride and Jewish identity. Maccabi Europe that I lead is active in 38 countries, has 75,000 members. And we organized the European Maccabi Games. We organized it this year in London. Despite many protests, despite many threats we got, we organized it in London. There were over 1,500 kids under the age of 18 years competing with each other. So it was a big party, and it was a very big event. And of course, we have the Maccabiah in Israel next year, 2025, which is still on a green light. And yeah, I think Maccabi gives people a way to connect with other Jewish people next to their religious connection. It gives them a way to experience the brotherhood and to really see that we are one people. So we are very much focusing also on education and all kinds of other important aspects of Jewish life.
So basically you're saying that Jews from all over Europe come together and compete in sports, and in that create a unity that often is not found in organizations or amidst people that have so many differences. In sports, it all falls away.
Yes, we want to connect everybody. That's why I also, when I started with Maccabi, I said I'm going to do it under two restrictions. First of all, we always keep Shabbat. And second of all the food has to be under the laws of kashrut, because I want Maccabi to be open for everybody, not only for people that are from a Reform, but also from the Orthodox and people who are not religious at all. We all connect, we all bring them in. And of course, for Maccabi, very important is the connection with our state of Israel. That's actually the most important connection that we have. So we learn them about Israel, and that's why we have the biggest Jewish event in the world, with almost 10,000 athletes competing with each other every 4 years in Israel, all over the States.
Well, that's beautiful, but you don't only deal with bringing Jews together in Europe in sports, you also go beyond that. And in fact, what happened in Amsterdam recently, you went out of your way to really aid the fans of Maccabi, and you were all out there to help the community with food and with transportation. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, you know, like all of us, what happened on October 7, we felt as a personal attack when our brothers and sisters were under attack, and we wanted to step up to the plate. And Maccabi in the Netherlands is one of the leading organizations, and we immediately organized a lot of demonstrations, conferences, etc., etc. We also had some very strong events. For instance, at October 7 this year, we organized the We Will Dance Again party, where 600 people attended, and we partied on a boat. The boat, by the way, was canceled 3 days before by the organization who owned the boat, because they they found out that we were a Zionist Jewish organization. So we killed them with our lawyers, so to speak. They're almost bankrupt now, and we changed to another boat. So Maccabi is also about fighting back and standing up for yourself, and to not be afraid of our enemies. And last week, of course, I went to the Kristallnacht Memorial. And afterwards, I went to the Ajax Stadium, because we had to play against, Ajax played against Maccabi Tel Aviv. And the atmosphere in the stadium was really good. Apart that Maccabi Tel Aviv really got kicked on the togus, of course. So they didn't play very well, but the atmosphere was very good, and we went home.
We won't tell anyone.
No. So we went home, and then in the middle of the night, I got a lot of phone calls and WhatsApp messages from the guys that I still am very much in contact with, the security organization, and also from my Maccabi boards. And I saw the gruesome pictures of Jews being attacked. And like on many occasions this year, when I stepped up to the plate with my team, I felt like it was an attack on my children. So I ran from the house and started calling all our volunteers. By the way, all these volunteers were already active during the Ukraine crisis, when we, as Maccabi Europe and Maccabi Holland, took refugees from Odessa, for instance, and we took them to Frankfurt, to Amsterdam, and to all other Eastern European countries. So this volunteer group was already active, and I immediately activated them, and we made a big shelter with first aid, and we created our own, sort of speak, volunteer taxi company, because the Israelis were afraid to take the taxis in Amsterdam, because they're mostly driven by people with an Arab background. So we, sort of speak, had to rescue hundreds of Israelis out of our own city. the city where we thought that we owned the city that was once named Makom, by the Jews.
And how did you feel the authorities dealt with that? How was the response of the mayor, for example, of Amsterdam, that you are indeed a friend of and close to? How did you feel about that?
Well, the mayor of Amsterdam had a lot of criticism, of course, about the way she acted. I said on national television, because I was interviewed at the shelter, I said this is a Kristallnacht 2.0 that's happening here. And this is a pogrom. So I was one of the first to use this name, to use these words, title for what happened. And at first she agreed with me, and we got a lot of police support after everything happened. And as we could read in the newspaper yesterday, as she declared on television, when they showed the old clip of mine, she pulled back from the word pogrom. And I had a private conversation with her, and I asked her, why do you pull back from the word pogrom? And she said, because it's politically used by the far right as a political tool, and I don't think it was a pogrom, because women were not raped, and children and men were not killed. And I said, so because of the police protection, you don't call it a pogrom. So we disagree on a lot of topics, but at the end of the day, I have to say, and I think that Rav Jacobs, the chief rabbi of the Netherlands, agrees with me that in the core, she's a good lady and she wants to support the Jewish community, but she is also trying to juggle with a huge Muslim community in Amsterdam, and she's trying to keep the peace. And she doesn't always make the best decision because of that. But that's my personal opinion. If you ask some other leaders in Holland, they will give you a completely different opinion.
So you're actually saying that two Jews have three opinions. That's very surprising. But, you know, I just want to draw a thread between you and Daniel. Daniel came to dance at the Nova Festival, and you actually wanted to create an event for people to dance again on a boat. And Daniel didn't know you, and you didn't know Daniel. But the thread that connects you two is so beautiful, and it's so touching. And this is, you know, this Jewish spirit that we all share. And those who are not Jewish, that are with us, that touch our souls. So thank you so much for everything that you do. And thank you as well for everything that you do and for being with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, David and Ruth. David, please stay where you are for a moment. I would like to call Rabbi Margolin, Mr. William Daroff, Mrs. Ellen Van Praag, and Chief Rabbi of the Netherlands, Rabbi Jacobs, to join me on stage. David, Aaron was the high priest, was renowned for his kindness. His life's work was the endless and vigorous promotion of peace. So it is only fitting that we award you for all the work you do with the EJA's Aaron Peace Prize. Please accept it now with our gratitude and respect.
Thank you. With deep gratitude for your inspiring work for Jews in sport and in building community bridges, I present this beautiful award to you on behalf of the EJA and on behalf of all of us. Thank you.
Our next speaker needs a little introduction. Widely regarded as one of the most influential Jews in the world today, He has advised presidents, senators, and the US Congress. He is a regular commentator on TV. He is quoted in the leading newspapers of the world, and he is now Chief Executive Officer of the Conference of Presidents of major Jewish American organizations. It is said that everything is bigger in America. In American Jewry, it doesn't get much bigger than Mr. William Daroff. Please join us.
Thank you very much. It is an honor to be here, Mr. Minister, Your Excellencies, members of Parliament, rabbis, pastor, and other distinguished guests. Thank you for the generous introduction, and thank you to the European Jewish Association for inviting me here today. The EJA plays an essential role in growing and safeguarding Jewish life here in Europe. Thank you, Rabbi Menachem Margolin, Ruth Wasserman Landy, Kol HaKavod, congratulations, and thank you for all that you do. What an amazing evening we've had here. I noted the remarks by the minister with the amazing letter from the president of Poland. We heard from the Baroness with her amazing story of survival. We heard from the pastor showing the solidarity of Christian America and Christians in general with Jews. The heroic Daniel and his brother working to save lives. And David Bessemer working to build peace through sports. It's an honor to share this stage with you all and with them. And let's give them all a round of applause. It's an honor to be with you here in Krakow, a place where our ancestors endured the worst period in Jewish history and were slaughtered en masse. The fact that we gather here as a proud Jewish organization with enduring family lines and thriving communities is nothing less than a miracle. In fact, here in Krakow, nearly 30 summers ago, while we were both studying the history of Eastern European Jewry and the Holocaust at Jagiellonian University, right down the street, I met my wife Heidi, who was a graduate student at New York University at the time. Heidi and I are together here, back in Poland for the first time in a quarter of a century, where we celebrate our two daughters, who are now in their 20s, who are a testament to the fact that Nazis and their predecessors and their successors will not extinguish the Jewish people. Yes. We gather at yet another existential moment in Jewish history. The last time I addressed the EJA was in Zagreb on October 11th of last year, just 4 days after October 7th. I had been in Jerusalem, in the old city of Jerusalem, at the Kotel, at the Western Wall, to celebrate Simchat Torah and Shabbat on Friday night, October 6th. It was a joyous and thrilling time, with many Torahs and much dancing and merriment. And then literally just a few hours later, I was awoken by sirens in the old city of Jerusalem and soon learned of the October 7th massacre and the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. Since that day, we have had no reprieve from the fear and grief that has been foisted upon us that day by the Hamas terror army and its supporters. We've known no peace, with wars raging on each of Israel's borders, with global anti-Semitism reaching levels not seen since the 1930s, and with more than 100 of our hostages still being held in dungeons in Gaza. And Daniel, we all stand with you and the people of Israel to demand the freedom for Yosef and 100 other innocent Israelis who are being held hostage as we speak. The brutal murder of 1,400 Jews, most of them civilians, engaged in mundane, life-affirming acts of domestic existence, conjured up the black and white images we saw in some of the videos here of ghettos, forced expulsions, cattle cars, and selection platforms. The celebration of that massacre throughout the world was even more shocking. While it is no secret what Hamas would do to Jews if the opportunity arose, to see our neighbors and classmates on social media and at pro-terror gatherings was beyond our imagination. Rather than bow their heads in shame, anti-Semites around the world felt exhilarated and emboldened. After October 7th, we turned to our traditional allies, to our left and to our right, and shockingly, many of them were not there. So I say thank you to those of you who were there and still are there. We know you are our friends and we appreciate your righteousness. We watched in horror just weeks ago as Jews were hunted down in the streets of Amsterdam, beaten into unconsciousness, and told to hide in their hotels. This modern day European pogrom, and yes, Amsterdam mayor, it was a pogrom, came shortly before the 86th anniversary of another, Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass in 1938. Enduring is not a passive act. In one respect, though, in the years since October 7th, we are witnessing a beautiful resurgence of Jewish life and identity. Many Jews around the world are attending Jewish events, are going to synagogue, are wearing Jewish symbols, celebrating Jewish holidays. These are active acts of continuity. In another important aspect, the battle against anti-Semitism has turned many American Jews into warriors at city council deliberations and school board meetings. We've lit up congressional switchboards and filled the White House mailroom. The spiritual vigor and organizational strength of American Jewry rose to meet the moment and will continue to ensure that Jewish life in the United States, in Israel, and around the world remains vibrant for generations to come. For years now, much of our communal advocacy has centered around promoting the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which we heard so much about this afternoon. In the past 5 years, 38 of our 50 United States have adopted the IHRA definition, an unimaginable feat of grassroots lobbying and education of our elected officials. Our federal Department of Education has incorporated the IHRA definition into anti-discrimination investigations, and it's key to protecting Jewish students on college campuses. The Combating Anti-Semitism movement recently released a bombshell report finding that American states that have not adopted the IHRA definition are more likely to have larger amounts of Jew hatred on their university and college campuses. The data bears this out. The IHRA definition is key to educating about and identifying and ultimately reducing anti-Semitism. We must continue to advocate for countries, localities, and other institutions to adopt the definition. And in fact, we have a new tool to do so in the global guidelines for countering anti-Semitism. The guidelines were developed by our special envoys to combat anti-Semitism, led by our US Ambassador, Deborah Lipstadt, and were launched in Buenos Aires in July at the anniversary of the Amia bombing. They've now been endorsed by more than 40 countries, including many in Europe, and provide common practices, best practices to adopt. Critically, the guidelines include the IHRA definition as a vital tool to help governments and agencies understand the inextricable link between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. They also offer suggestions to appoint national coordinators to collect data on incidents and perceptions of anti-Semitism, to educate on Jewish culture and the Holocaust, and to engage with social media companies. We all must act as ambassadors for both the IHRA definition and the guidelines. Anti-Semitism remains with us. This oldest hatred is also the most persistent. But as we contend with unprecedented threats to Jews around the world, we can take solace in the fact that we are more organized and impassioned than ever. And we also have a means of self-defense, namely the State of Israel, which the Holocaust and October 7th proved to be vital to Jewish survival. From the exiles the Jewish people have endured from the land of Israel, to the pogroms of the shtetl, to the Holocaust, to the Amiah bombing, to the Sbarro bombing of the Second Intifada, to October 7th, and to many more dreadful days, we are bound to each other, to our ancestors, by these tragedies we face and the resolve that we display as we endure. History shows that we are only strong when we are united and unified. That when we are united and unified, we survive and we thrive. Let us come together as one to build a stronger and more unified future. And again, let me thank those of you who are not Jewish for standing with us during these trying times. Your friendship, your righteous allyship mean the world to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, William, for everything you do for Jews everywhere. You are an inspiration. Ladies and gentlemen, a couple of important announcements. Firstly, I would like to thank the entire team of the EJA for their amazing work behind the scenes to make this event possible. Also, to Kaplan production team for their amazing organization. Also very important, breakfast tomorrow morning for those of you who are hungry, starting at 6 a.m. until 7:15 a.m. We ask you to check out, and those who are leaving from Auschwitz straight to the airport, take your luggage with you to buses 1, 2, and 3. Only buses number 1, 2, and 3 are for this purpose, from the camps straight to the airport. Everyone else returning to the hotel can take any other buses. The buses will depart from the hotel to the camps at 7:30 a.m. sharp. It is very important that we leave on time. In addition, we advise you to dress in warm clothing. Dessert will be served.